Are you ready to uncover the secrets behind the global market revolution in 2025? Stay tuned as we dive into the key trends and strategies that will shape the future of business.
Okay, so welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today's deep dive is a little different. We're looking ahead. We're going to try to figure out what the global competitive landscape is going to look like in 2025.
Yeah, it's a big question. A lot of moving parts, but, the future isn't something that just happens to us, right?
Yeah.
We can anticipate it to some extent if we look at the right trends, and that's what we've done.
Right, and our listeners are here because they want to get ahead of the curve, right? They don't want to be caught flat-footed. So we've really tried to distill this down to the essential insights. No filler, just the stuff that really matters.
Exactly. Actionable intelligence, right?
Hmm.
So what we're going to do today is break down some of the key forces that are already shaping the way businesses compete, and we'll project forward a bit to 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, so let's jump in. I guess the first thing that really jumps out from our research is all the changes happening in trade policies.
Right. And it's not just, more or less free trade. It's more nuanced than that. What we're seeing is this idea of flexible liberalization.
Flexible liberalization. Yeah, that's a mouthful. What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, it means that countries are trying to, walk a bit of a tightrope. They want the benefits of open markets, right?
Yeah.
Access to more consumers, lower costs, and all that. But they also want to protect certain industries, that they see as strategically important, maybe for national security or something like that.
So it's like free trade, but with some caveats.
Exactly. It's like a targeted approach to opening up.
Yeah.
And for businesses, this means you got to be really savvy about, which markets are truly open and which ones have these, kind of hidden barriers.
Right. So less about just assuming everything's level playing field and more about, understanding the specific rules of the game in each market.
Precisely. And on top of that, we've also got this whole wave of new trade agreements coming up, both multilateral and bilateral.
So how do these, new agreements fit into this bigger picture of, flexible liberalization and all that?
Well, these agreements are often about trying to, grease the wheels of global commerce, right? So they're focused on streamlining customs procedures, harmonizing standards, that kind of thing. And this is all good in theory. It makes trade easier and it can open up new markets for businesses.
But there's got to be a catch, right?
Well, the catch is that it also intensifies competition. When more players can access the same markets, you got to up your game.
Right. So it's not enough to just be, good anymore. You got to be great. You got to stand out.
Exactly. And you got to be able to adapt quickly, because the rules of the game are constantly changing.
So speaking of changing rules, can we talk about technology for a minute? I mean, it's pretty obvious that digital transformation is, a huge deal. But what does that actually mean for businesses trying to compete in 2025?
Well, the key takeaway here is that digital transformation is no longer optional. It's table stakes. It's the bare minimum you need to be in the game.
So what does that look like in practice? What do businesses actually need to be doing?
Well, it goes way beyond just, having a website or using social media. It's about fundamentally rethinking your business model. Leveraging data analytics, artificial intelligence, all these tools to become more efficient, more customer-centric, more agile.
So if you're not investing in these technologies, you're essentially, falling behind before you even start the race.
Exactly. You're going to be stuck in the slow lane while everyone else is zooming past you.
And it's not just technology, right? Our research also highlights how consumer behavior is changing. How do businesses adapt to that?
Yeah, this is crucial. The pandemic, and the economic uncertainty of the last few years has really shifted what consumers want and how they buy things.
So businesses can't just assume that what worked in the past, is going to work in the future.
Right. You got to be constantly monitoring the market, looking for those emerging trends, and then adjusting your products, your marketing, your whole approach.
So it's all about agility, right? Being able to, pivot quickly and meet the customer where they are.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got this whole other layer of complexity, which is, what we call disruptive innovations.
Oh, yeah. The stuff that keeps CEOs up at night.
So in the context of 2025, what kind of disruptions are we talking about?
Well, it's hard to predict specifics, right? That's the nature of disruption.
Yeah.
But what we can say is that the pace of technological change is accelerating. And this is going to create all sorts of new opportunities and threats for businesses.
So what's the best way to deal with that, this constant threat of being disrupted?
Well, you got to be proactive, right? You got to be constantly scanning the horizon, looking for those weak signals of change, and then be willing to experiment, to adapt, to maybe even cannibalize your own business before someone else does.
So it's kind of like a paradox, right? You got to be willing to destroy what you've built in order to build something new that's even better.
Exactly. It's about embracing creative destruction, constantly reinventing yourself to stay ahead of the curve. Okay, so we've talked about trade policies, we've talked about technology, we've talked about consumer behavior and disruptive innovations. It's a lot to take in, but how does all of this come together? What does it actually mean for the competitive landscape in 2025?
Well, I think the key takeaway is that competition is going to be fiercer than ever before. You're going to have more players vying for the same customers, and the barriers to entry are going to be lower thanks to technology and globalization.
So it's not just about competing with the guys down the street anymore. It's about competing with anyone, anywhere in the world.
Exactly. And it's not just about competing on price either. It's about competing on value, on innovation, on customer experience.
So how do businesses even begin to navigate this, this incredibly complex and dynamic environment?
Well, our research points to a few key strategies. One is doubling down on digital transformation. This means investing in the technologies and the talent that you need to become a truly data-driven organization.
So it's not just about, buying the latest gadgets. It's about using those gadgets to gain real insights into your customers, your operations, your whole business.
Right. And it's also about being able to move quickly,
Right.
to experiment, to iterate, to fail fast, and learn from those failures.
So it's a cultural shift as much as a technological one.
Exactly. And then another key strategy is diversification, both in terms of your product portfolio and your geographic reach.
So don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yes.
Spread the risk a bit.
Exactly. And be strategic about it.
Yeah.
Don't just chase every shiny object. Look for markets where you have a real competitive advantage.
And then, of course, there's collaboration.
Yeah.
Our research really emphasizes the importance of strategic alliances.
Right, because in this kind of environment, no one can do it alone. You need to partner with other businesses, with research institutions, with governments to access the resources, the expertise, the markets that you need to succeed.
So it's about building ecosystems, right? Not just competing in isolation.
Precisely. And finally, I think it's important to emphasize the role of continuous learning. Now, in this rapidly changing world, you can't afford to stand still.
So you got to stay curious. Got to keep learning. Got to keep adapting.
And that means attending conferences, reading industry publications, even just talking to your customers and your competitors to understand what's working, what's not.
So to sum it all up, it sounds like the competitive landscape in 2025 is going to be, incredibly challenging, but also incredibly exciting.
Absolutely. It's going to be a time of tremendous opportunity for those who are prepared to embrace change, to innovate, to collaborate.
So for our listeners out there, as you think about the year ahead and the years beyond, what's the one thing you can do today to prepare for this future?
That's a great question. I think the most important thing is to cultivate a mindset of agility, a willingness to experiment, to learn to adapt.
Because the only constant is change, right? And the businesses that can embrace that change are the ones that are going to thrive.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And on that note, thanks for joining us for the deep dive.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Don't forget to subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. If you find this video helpful, like to support us, comment to share your thoughts, and share to spread the value to more people. Thank you for being part of our community.